let's get into the factors that are going to change the supply. So when we're talking about supply, right, we're talking about the willingness to sell or just the production process in general. So here's an example. Again, ceteris paribus, meaning other things being equal, the cost of production and the desired profit do give you what the supply is looking for, right, of what the firm is willing to sell. So whenever the cost of production, so we're looking at selling coffee and lattes and things like that, if the cost of milk goes up, that's going to change the supply of the lattes. And the reason it's going to change it is because that desired profits plus the cost of production, the cost of production is now higher, and you add in that desired profit. So now what we're seeing here is a different supply curve, right? Now there are other things that are going to be changing the supply as well. Inputs or the factors of production is a major factor that's going to be influencing supply. Remember, the factors of production are labor, materials, capital, machinery, entrepreneurship, right? The profits, all of those things are going to influence the supply. Okay, so whenever we talk about input prices, right, the price of coffee, the actual coffee beans, will change the supply of lattes. So basically, because the price of the coffee is higher, firms now have to buy less coffee because it's more expensive, and because they have less coffee, they have to make less lattes. So the supply of the lattes are now lower. Let's look at it from a labor or machinery standpoint. If the price of labor, like wages, were lower, what does a firm do? A firm can now hire more people. What can you do with more people? You can now make more coffees and more lattes. So whenever the price of labor or machinery decreases, we do see an increase in supply. So in general, whenever the price of an input is higher, we do see a lower supply. But if the price of an input were to be lower, we do see an increase in supply. If the price for milk were lower, they can buy more milk, make more lattes. Natural conditions also plays a factor, such as good weather for farming. They have good weather, it's nice and sunny, so they can produce more. If a hurricane destroys a bunch of businesses, obviously supply would be lower. So natural conditions do play a major part in supply. Technology is going to be your friend when it comes to supply. In general, technology makes things easier to produce or cheaper to produce, leading to more supply. So in general, we see the technology increasing these days, so we should see an increase in supply. Very, very rarely are we going to see a decrease in technology, so don't worry about that one. Whenever we have more technology, more supply. Number of firms obviously does affect the supply. If there are more coffee shops in your town, guess what? That means there are more supply of coffee, right? More firms, more supply. If firms start shutting down, right, instead of that favorite coffee shop that you had, you now can't go there, so you have to go somewhere else. So the entire total amount of coffee that was supplied has now diminished. Okay. In terms of government policies, this also plays a factor in supply. Taxes, if a business has to pay more money in taxes, they have less money to buy other goods, other inputs. So if they have to pay more in taxes, they buy less milk. With less milk, less supply of lattes. So remember, taxes is money paid to the government. So in general, what we'll see is whenever business taxes are higher, supply is lower. Subsidies are the opposite of a tax. Subsidy is where the government's actually going to give money to businesses in order to produce more. Okay. An example of subsidy is government is trying to increase the amount of labor that is hired. So they will give a subsidy if you hire a certain amount of labor in a certain time period. So because you have the extra money, you buy more labor, you have more supply. So in general, whenever subsidies are higher, supply is higher. Regulations are another government action. In general, regulations kind of slow down the process of producing. So such as rules about safer workplace, quality control, environmental protection. These regulations in general will lower supply, or they have to increase the cost of production because they have to pay fees and fines and all those things. So with regulations increasing, we will see a decrease in supply. More regulations, decrease in supply. For other countries, they might lower regulations. So what are we going to do? Firms will locate to those countries and actually start to produce more. So lower regulations, more supply. Okay. Other things that affect the supply are the price of other goods. This one's interesting. So we do have two types. We have substitutes in production and complements in production. Here's how substitutes in production work. Valero turns crude oil into gas or asphalt. Okay, those are two things that they do. If the selling price of gas were to increase, okay, what is Valero going to do? They can sell gas at a higher price. They're going to try and sell as much gas as they can. So this will increase the quantity supply of gas, dedicating more oil to gas production. However, because more oil is going towards gas production, there's less oil for asphalt production. So, because the price of one good increases, the supply of another good decreased. Valero substituted oil for gas. Right? They took asphalt off the shelf and put gas on the market. Substitutes in production. So when the price of one good increases, the supply of the other good is lower. Substitutes in production. We also have complements in production where Valero can use natural gas and oil, right? So natural gas and oil are found in the same areas of the earth. So whenever you start to produce oil, you also find natural gas. Therefore, if the price of gas were to increase, you're selling more gas, you need more oil. Whenever you have more oil, you now have more natural gas. Okay? So because the price of the gas increased, we found a bigger supply of natural gas. Because the price of good X is higher, we now supply more of the other good. So this is complements in production. Because you have more of this, that creates more supply of this. Right? So in general, these are the factors that are going to be changing supply. So if we have favorable weather conditions, cheaper prices, better technology, right, we will be supplying more. And again, more is to the right. If you have bad weather, higher input prices, or higher taxes, more regulations, we will see a decrease in supply. So therefore, we will have supply shift to the left. Okay, because that is less. Now, some students get caught up with supply up or down, and they will try to shift the supply up or down. Oh, sorry about that. Or down. Okay. It is very important that when we say supply more, you're having a bigger quantity, so you need to shift it to the right. Whenever your supply is lower, your quantity is lower, so you need to shift it lower to the left. Do not go up and down with the curves. Focus on going right or left. More is to the right, less is to the left. Very important there. Okay? So the next thing we'll talk about is the difference between a movement and a shift.